What's going on, everybody? Welcome to No Timeouts, a football show coming at you from the Score Studio. My name is Jonah Birnbaum. That is Dan Wilkins. That is Tyler MacKillop. That is Justin Boone. You know them. You love them. Fellas, another week in the books, and we're starting to get a little bit more clarity on what's real and what's not in what's been a pretty wacky season so far. We're not out of small sample territory just yet, but we're getting a little bit closer, and I want to start here this week. One thing that feels increasingly safe to say, the sample size notwithstanding, is that the Buffalo Bills are a wagon. They have the best offense in the NFL, the best point differential in the NFL. They're 3-0. This is a team that we thought was going to take a step backwards this season. That has not been the case so far. And Boone, as our resident Bills fan, I want to throw it to you first. What is your take on Buffalo's extraordinary start so far?
I mean, they look great. They look even better than I thought they were going to as a Bills fan. That's kind of shocking that before the season, remember, I was worried they might not even make the playoffs this year. But I think I have to preach a little bit of caution on this one. I do believe that now they are going to make the playoffs. But like I have for the last few weeks, when we've talked about teams at the top of the show, we have to talk about the matchups that they've had so far, right? The 1-2 Cardinals, who also look better than I think a lot of people thought before the season, but they're certainly not a Super Bowl contending kind of team. Then they played the Dolphins, who lost Tua during that game. And then last week against the Jags, right? The Jags are just a floundering franchise right now. So it's going to be very interesting to see over the next 3 weeks. They have to go on the road for 3 straight games against the Ravens, the Texans, and the Jets. That's going to be the real test here for Buffalo. But you can't deny, Joe Brady, their OC, he's picked up where he left off last season. He looks great as a play caller there. Their defense just keeps overcoming injury after injury. Sean McDermott's scheme there really getting them through. So I'm excited now that I do think Josh Allen will be there in January. He's going to have a chance to potentially overcome the other quarterbacks in the AFC, the Patrick Mahomes, the Joe Burrows, and he'll have a shot to finally get to that Super Bowl. It's great news, but I still want to see what they do over the next 3 weeks before I let myself get too excited.
Yeah, this team is all about Josh Allen for me, and I don't want to victory lap too much, but if we go back to our MVP discussion from the preseason, I was talking about this. I was like, Josh Allen is the guy for me because if the Bills are going to be good like they have been so far, it's going to take that 2015 Cam Newton type season, and so far that's what he's doing.
Yeah, I would, barring injury, I already think the MVP belongs to Josh Allen. We could fast forward to the end of the year, and as long as he doesn't get hurt, I don't see a world where he doesn't win MVP.
And he's playing in control, right? We're even seeing him slide out there, and he should look in control based on the teams they've played so far. So let's see if he can keep this up. I think he probably will be able to, though.
Yeah, I mean, the matchups notwithstanding, he's playing at the highest level, I think, of his career, which is saying a lot, but over 10 adjusted net yards per pass attempts, completing over 75% of his pass attempts, 7 touchdowns to 0 interceptions. This is just absolutely silly, and it doesn't matter the concept. Play action, screen pass. He is executing every play on such a high level. The Bills are cooking because of him. Yes, they've had a soft schedule so far, but Josh Allen is playing at an MVP level. But he wasn't the only one who had a big night on Monday. Jayden Daniels had an absolute coming out party against the Cincinnati Bengals, leading Washington to an incredible victory. We talked about Daniels last week. We discussed the possibility of him potentially breaking Lamar Jackson's single-season rushing yards record for rushing yards by a quarterback. Whether that happens or not, though, T, this dude looks primed to put up a truly special rookie season.
Yeah, Wilkins said it about himself, but if we could victory lap it, I don't want to do this all the start of the show. Maybe it'll encourage people to stick around. Jayden Daniels to win Offensive Rookie of the Year looks like a really good bet if you placed it. I don't think a lot of people know this about Jayden Daniels, but Jayden Daniels didn't originally commit to LSU. He was actually playing at Arizona State. That's where he was for his first 3 years of college. And when he was leaving, one of his teammates actually put out a video as soon as he announced that he was entering the transfer portal that they were outside his locker, video outside his locker, guys going into his locker saying this guy sucks. And listen, they weren't completely wrong about Jayden Daniels as a player at that specific time. He had a really good first year of college, but in his second year, he threw 10 touchdowns, 10 interceptions. His legs were always a factor, and that was a great asset to his game. But this is a guy in his first 4 years of college, his completion percentage on passes of 20-plus air yards was below 40%. And then all of a sudden, this was a player that even if he was hitting guys in stride, even if he was hitting guys downfield, he wasn't hitting them in stride and turning, 25-yard passes into 60-yard touchdowns because guys are catching balls and making plays on the run to finish the score. This is a guy that in that fifth year at LSU, He completed almost 65% of his passes of 20-plus air yards, just found the deep ball in an incredible way. And this is a player that I think you can trust. Not only does he look good right now, but is probably going to continue to develop and only get better over the next few years in this league because, yes, he looked fantastic, but I still don't even think the offense is completely opening up for him. He's like 19th, 20th in the NFL in passes of 20-plus air yards, and 4 of those came on Monday. So if Cliff really opens this offense up and lets him, do what he does best, you can see even better performances from the one you saw on Monday, which was obviously incredible. But maybe the talent level of his skill position players isn't quite good enough that they're willing to do that. But man, Daniels looks great. He's seems to be the most prepared to play at this level of the rookies we've seen so far.
Yeah, and you talked about the growth. That was so big for him going from what he was at ASU to what he became at LSU and being the second pick in the draft. And for me, that growth continued from what he was at LSU to what he is now showing early on.
Yeah.
At LSU, he was very big on scrambling. If it wasn't there at first, he would take off and run, and to great success, so you can't really blame him for it. I'm sure LSU coaches encouraged him to do that because it was good for business. But now, I think as we saw Monday night, I wasn't totally captivated by what we saw in the first 2 weeks, even though he put up a lot of rushing stats. But what we saw Monday night was him scrambling to throw and really opening up more in the throwing game. So I was super excited about what I saw, and yeah, if this continues, he's the easy offensive rookie of the year.
And fantasy-wise, a top 5 fantasy quarterback, if not better this year, right? As long as he stays healthy, which we always have to bring that up.
I was trying my absolute hardest to flip all my Caleb Williams shares into Jayden Daniels shares before last week, and nobody was taking the bait.
So I want to follow up on that. By the way, Jayden Daniels, second among quarterbacks in expected points added per play, only behind presumptive MVP Josh Allen. Is it too early to draw the comparison between this year's first and second overall draft picks and last year's first and second overall draft picks? Because you look at what we've seen so far from Caleb Williams and Jayden Daniels respectively, feels like there's an emerging parallel between Bryce Young and CJ Stroud. Wilkie, you got an opinion here.
Yeah, I mean, if you want to draw the comparison from Jayden to CJ Stroud in the sense that they were maybe a little too overlooked, I'm on board with that. Not on board with Caleb as a comparison to Bryce. I actually really like what I've seen from Caleb for the most part. He obviously has some misses, a bunch that he'll want back and that he'll get better with, but to me, the main issue is the Bears and the offensive line, and we'll probably get into this a little bit later and how well they're not setting him up for success right now. But I'm impressed with everything I've seen from Caleb so far, so I'm not quite ready to call him Bryce Young. I still think he'll be the best quarterback from this class, but that doesn't mean there can't be multiple great ones.
Yeah, that's a really good point, and it sure looks like Jayden Daniels has all the tools to be a great quarterback. Speaking of something that's been remarkable in the early going is the Minnesota Vikings. They're 3-0. They have been shockingly good, contrary to expectations. Everything is going right for them, and we're going to talk about Sam Darnold's resurgence a little bit later on with Josh. But right now I want to focus on that Vikings defense, which is second in the NFL in points allowed per game and has shut down both the 49ers and the Houston Texans. Wilkins, what is going on with that Minnesota defense?
This defense is amazing, and like you said, they're second in the league in points allowed, only to the Steelers. And you might say, well, why aren't the Steelers getting this kind of love? Like you said, the Vikings did this to the 49ers and the Texans, two legitimately great offenses. We saw a little bit of this last year with Brian Flores and just his ability to really have this incredible game planning. He's taken it to another level in 2024. His ability to kind of dial up these blitz schemes and really disguise any coverage from any pre-snap looks. Frankly, it's diabolical, and quarterbacks have no idea what to do with it. We even saw after the 49ers-Vikings game, Brock Purdy goes up to him and just tells him how crazy the scheme is. I think that speaks for itself. This, to me, is the best defense in the league, and you pair that with an offense that is third in scoring, eighth in EPA per play. This is a legitimate contender, so I can't wait to watch this team the rest of the year.
I will say the Packers have had quite a bit of success, though, against Flores, so I'm curious to see what happens this week. We assume that Jordan Love is going to be back for this game, so that'll be a good test for him, but there's no denying. I mean, even other players are going up to Brian Flores and telling him this, right? That it's just so tough to play against that defense.
He's got to be a head coach next year.
Well, we had this cover. Remember
I know. We're going to do this a lot. But
Yeah, it's been wild to watch them just absolutely shut down some really, really strong offenses. Jordan Love's going to have his work cut out for him in this return. This is a team that's second in the league in blitz rate. They also lead the NFL in sacks and in QB hurries. Just on all levels of defense, they are absolutely stymieing opposing offenses right now. We'll see if they can keep it going. One dude who hasn't really got it going so far is Travis Kelce. As much as Kansas City is playing at a high level, shocker, Kelsey's conspicuously reduced role within the Chiefs' passing game has become a story. It's become a talking point. Patrick Mahomes said that Kelce isn't getting as involved because teams are double teaming him. They're taking that option away for Patrick Mahomes. What else is Patrick Mahomes going to say? Boone, in spite of what Mahomes says, are you worried about Travis Kelce?
Are we talking about from a real life standpoint or from a fantasy standpoint?
Both.
From a real life standpoint, no. I think there's a lot of things that he does out there where he's still helping the offense. And the team's 3-0, so whatever they're doing right now is working. I also discussed before the season whether they were going to kind of dial back Kelce a little bit to try to keep him healthy for the playoffs, right? And it reminds me, I might even brought this up on this show. I probably for sure brought it up on the Score Fantasy Football podcast about Shaquille O'Neal kind of later in his career when his teams were focused on trying to make title runs. And if he got hurt, they would give him a ton of time off to make sure he was healthy for the playoffs. And they didn't really put as much on his plate because they needed him later in the season. That could be what's happening here, but the reduced passing role, it's more just in the box score. Like he's still playing quite a bit right now, but they have other weapons that they're able to go to. And Rashee Rice looks like a legit number one receiver. So why not use him as that guy? And that's why for real life, I'm not that worried. We don't see elite tight ends like Kelce just fall off a cliff. A lot of them have aged pretty gracefully. They continue to be strong players. So I'm not totally worried about him from a real life standpoint. For fantasy, though, if you were expecting that he was going to be the tight end 1, tight end 2 overall, like he's been for many, many seasons, that's where I am worried about him because I think we're going to see him dial back like we have so far. There'll still be some big games. It's not going to be as consistent as it used to be. So that's where I'm worried. I think, will he come around? Right now, he's tight end 26 in fantasy points per game. There's no way he's going to finish outside the top 10. He's probably going to get back into the top 5, small sample size, all that sort of stuff. But I don't think you could expect that you have that league-winning tight end, that guy that's giving you a massive advantage anymore. But don't be surprised as the season goes along here if Kelce starts putting up some good games. And the Chiefs, they're going to be there in January, and Kelsey's going to be putting up good stats when it matters most.
Yeah, we did see a little bit of that last year too, right? Like he was a little quiet down the stretch, and then all of a sudden you have the AFC Championship game and the Super Bowl where he was huge. So I'm not that concerned. He's a veteran who knows how to do some of the finer things in the game to really make some plays. So I think they're going to be just fine.
His snap count is at 85%, which is the highest it's been since 2020. He's out there. He's just not being targeted as much. And it's funny, too, because, like, for the longest time, everyone was like, oh, the Chiefs' passing game is too one-dimensional. They only have Travis Kelce. They have no viable wideouts. Now they have Rashee Rice looking like a star, and everyone's like, well, what about Travis Kelce? It's like...
Well, that's the Taylor effect.
It's got to
Yeah.
Got to talk about it on the podcast. He's got to talk about it on the podcast, too.
Yeah, I'm sure he will. I'm sure that, it's all fertile ground for good content. Moving on. One of the notable things we saw in week 1 was passing being way down across the league. 2 weeks later, that's still the case. Teams are averaging just over 201 yards per game and are attempting just over 31 passes per game. So for comparison's sake, last year, those team averages were at 219 and 34. Dan, why does passing remain down in 2024?
Yeah, I mean, after years of offenses really dictating the games and passing offense in particular, defenses have finally caught up and in many cases just jumped ahead. And this has resulted in some really wild takes from, you saw Mel Kiper recently say that the NFL should ban too high defenses. Seems a little silly to me when you could just challenge offenses to, figure it out. But honestly, too high is not really the only factor here. You can throw deep on those looks if you want to, but the reality is defenses have gotten a lot better and more exotic, and offenses with bad offensive lines and young quarterbacks are having a lot of trouble kind of combating that. You go back to Brian Flores going up against young quarterbacks. If a defense is coming out in a cover 0 look pre-snap and they spin into this ridiculous inverted cover 2 at the snap of the ball, it's no surprise that young quarterbacks are going to have some trouble dealing with that, especially so fresh out of college. Mm-hmm. you can even take a 1-game small sample size from this past week. Andy Dalton comes off the bench, first 3-touchdown, 300-yard game of the year. I think the league is kind of missing these veteran quarterbacks who really know how to process the game. The young guys will get there eventually, and offenses will continue to develop these concepts that kind of attack what defenses are throwing at them right now. But in the meantime, honestly, I think that we should just enjoy this very rare era of defenses kind of being ahead, especially in the passing game. They're doing some really cool things, and honestly, if it means that teams that don't have a Josh Allen or Patrick Mahomes need to lean on the run game a little bit more for some more efficiency, sign me up for that, because honestly, that's good football too.
You can't tell me that lack of preseason snaps doesn't factor into it a little bit, and that we see, that coming into play, especially when you're talking about younger quarterbacks who aren't getting that prep time and are just getting thrown out there early in the year. And I also think the league is kind of like up and down like this, right? Like we go away from rushing and defenses adjust, and then you go, okay, how do we counter that? We start to run the ball a little more, and then it'll go back around. So I'm not that concerned about it. And I think as the year goes along, we'll see passing come back.
I will say you could put Bo Nix out there in the preseason all you want, but he's not going to see like Brian Flores type blitz schemes. Like it's going to be as vanilla gets, and you're going to get your best reps in training camp and joint practices where they really turn it up. I just think that the difference in the college game where these guys are wide open, wide hashes, everything is there for them, and defenses aren't doing as much to disguise. It's a really big wake-up call for guys in the NFL now, and it takes some time to adjust.
You guys want the social team? I love this. I got a Mel Kiper style take on this.
Let's go, baby.
I really think it's a case of pretty poor offensive line play across the league.
Oh, yeah.
And how much of a talent advantage defensive lines have. Because a lot across the league, we're seeing far lighter boxes. Teams are not stacking the box nearly at the same rate because they feel they have such a big advantage on the defensive line.
Yeah.
In the CFL, they play with the defensive line 1 yard off the line of scrimmage. You give the offensive line a little bit more time, you might see some points, because they do see points in the CFL, a lot more points in the CFL than they do in the NFL. That would be the Mel Kiper take. I would never say to do that. But
I think you just did.
Instead of, well, I kind of did. Yeah, I did say that it's an option. I would never say to do it quite like Mel Kiper is for the getting rid of the 2-high zone. But hey, that's an option. I'm just putting it out there.
Offensive line is definitely a problem, and there's college offenses don't produce offense. It's hard to find 300-pound guys who can move like that and have that technique. It's hard to develop those guys.
You go to the you talk to coaches that are in the midst of the transfer portal in college football, and every guy's out there is looking for a tackle. They're hard to find. That's for sure.
Last thing before we move on, gents. 3 weeks into the season, I think it's safe to say there hasn't been a bigger disappointment than the Cincinnati Bengals. They're 0-3 with losses to the Patriots, most recently to Washington, and they're now behind the 8-ball. Only once this century has a team started 0-3 and made the playoffs. And with that said, T, is the Bengals season already over?
I don't think so. This is a team that's obviously been in this type of, not quite this hole, but a hole in many seasons before with Burrow. I do think that they benefit from a really easy schedule. Going into the season, they had the third easiest schedule in the league based on Vegas win totals. The schedule is still pretty easy the rest of the way. That includes a matchup with the Panthers this week, hopefully to get right. And
it's an Andy Dalton revenge game, buddy.
That is true. That is true. I forgot about that.
Right? Never mind. The season is over.
Yeah.
I do have a lot of faith in Lou Anarumo as a coach. I do really like Lou Anarumo as a coach. We've seen him give, Patrick Mahomes specifically a ton of trouble throughout his career, and a lot of the good quarterbacks in the league trouble with his defensive scheme. Here's what I think the problem is with the Bengals, and it should be something that we probably could have thought about before the season started. This is a organization that's done a really, really poor job of evaluating talent in the draft. That's the difference between the Chiefs being able to pay Mahomes a bunch of money and being able to continue to be a great team, is because they've identified talent in the draft that has been contributed to their team. You look at Myles Murphy, who they took in the first round. He's barely been on the field. I think he took his first snaps of the season this week. They took Jordan Battle in the third round not this past year, the year before. They decided to sign Von Bell and sign Geno Stone and just not even give Battle his spot at safety. They've paid some guys that I really don't think they should have paid, especially some off-ball linebackers like Jermaine Pratt. And you look at the draft, and they just haven't found difference makers since they took Joe Burrow and Jamar Chase and T. Higgins. And that's a problem when you start to pay these guys, is you need to be able to find value either in free agency or in the draft, and I don't think they've done that. And that is where the roster's at, especially on defense, that lacks a lot of game-breaking talent. Outside of, Trey Hendrickson's been terrific to start the year, but outside of that, they don't really have a lot of talent on defense to execute what Anarumo likely wants to do.
It's also been really weird the last few seasons for the Bengals. They've had injuries before the year coming into the season, like Joe Burrow's been hurt in past years, and then they got off to slow starts. And this year they had all the contract holdouts and those issues, and T. Higgins not playing. Like, they just haven't really hit a season smooth, and they always start slow. I think there's a chance that they're going to be okay and they'll get right. But yeah, it's very, very strange that each season they kind of come in and just struggle in the opening month.
I think the only thing that's really going to help them here is that, looking at the AFC heading into the season, I think we all have trouble figuring out which teams are going to make up those limited playoff spots just because there were so many good teams. But now you're looking at the Dolphins probably falling off. The Browns, I don't think, are going to be in the mix. So the Bengals do have that chance to kind of slide in there to one of those last wild card spots. Again, I don't think we expect any of the AFC South teams other than the division winner to be in. So there is the opportunity, but it's been a really weird trend how they always start so terribly under Zach Taylor.
Yeah, I don't think the Jags are going to be there either. Call me crazy. We'll see. We'll see. Great stuff, fellas. On that note, let's bring in our virtual homie, the Score's lead NFL reporter, Josh Tolentino. Josh, always great to have you, buddy. Got a lot of quarterback talk on tap for you today. Let's start with one of the season's more remarkable success stories. Sam Darnold. 3 games into the year, he leads the NFL in passing touchdowns. He's second in passer rating, and his Vikings are 3-0. Josh, what's behind Sam Darnold's resurgence in Minnesota?
Jonah, I recently spoke to one of Sam Darnold's close people in his circle, and he basically explained to me that last year served as a reset button for Darnold and his family, where he was able to live in a very successful scheme, successful franchise, just a successful operation there in San Francisco. Again, reset everything mentally for him. He had a 21-35 record as a starter with the Jets, the Panthers, and then obviously the Niners. But he never really lived up to that first-round pedigree. And fast forward to now, it's just been such a great pairing between him and Kevin O'Connell, the head coach there for the Vikings. And you just really, really like that chemistry and how KOC's setting up Darnold for success. You see they've increased their 21 personnel usage. Their motion rate is up. And, Sam Darnold is doing all of this without arguably 2 of his top pass catchers and TJ Hawkinson and Jordan Addison. I'd argue that, Sam Darnold's also never benefited from pass protection like he is now. The unsung heroes definitely for the Minnesota Vikings. Outside of that Brian Flores-led defense, like what you guys mentioned earlier, but they've got to be Christian Darrisaw, Brian O'Neill. They've just been playing lights out. They're 2 top offensive tackles last week against the Texans. Danielle Hunter, Will Anderson, a very good tandem, pass rush tandem. Just 1 sack of Darnold. And, guys, don't get me wrong. There are still instances where it feels like Sam Darnold is holding on to the ball too long. But just 2 turnover-worthy plays here for Sam Darnold. And entering this season, all the hype was about Green Bay and Detroit, deservedly for this division. But it's time to start taking seriously these Minnesota Vikings and Sam Darnold for the NFC North.
100%. Now, on the flip side, one of the season's biggest disappointments has been Trevor Lawrence and the Jacksonville Jaguars. They are winless. That offense is averaging less than 14 points a game. They're doing a whole lot of nothing. Josh, 2 years ago, Trevor Lawrence was a Pro Bowler and looked like one of the game's most promising up-and-coming young quarterbacks. What is wrong with Trevor Lawrence?
Yeah, let's be real. Facing the contract, the Jaguars felt like they had to pay him, given the rising price of quarterbacks and just the dynamic of the quarterback market in the NFL. They felt like they had to pay him. Just also facing the situation now, Doug Peterson, who's up against a lot of pressure. I'd argue that he's one of the hottest seats in the NFL right now. They're not going to bench their $275 million quarterback, but the Jaguars, they just look completely defeated. And focusing specifically on Trevor himself, he looks like he's trying to make the perfect play way too often. His mechanics are all over the place. You're seeing him throw short of guys, throw ahead of guys. And really, that's affected the rest of the team. You look at his pass catchers. They've got the worst drop rate in the NFL, almost at 17% dropped passes. It's affecting everybody around him. So Trevor, I think, needs to go back to the basics, just focusing on his mechanics, as simple as that sounds. And defensively, they're also struggling. I mean, they're down 3 of their top corners. You look at the situation in this most recent game, they go 3 and out, and all of a sudden, next time Trevor takes the field, they're down 14-0. So just a disgusting situation all around there. And again, the pressure's ticking up there for Doug Peterson. Owner Shad Khan's got a pretty high patience level, is what I've been described to. But I mean, is ticking up there, and their next opportunity, coincidentally, comes against the team that Trevor Lawrence last defeated, dating back to, I believe, November of last season, the Houston Texans this weekend. So we'll see if they're able to get it together down in Houston.
Man, oh man, what a mess it's been in Jacksonville. And another quarterback who is really looking to get things on track is Caleb Williams. His NFL career has not gotten off to the most auspicious start. He's thrown 4 interceptions to just 2 touchdowns. He hasn't been terribly efficient, and he's really struggled to throw the deep ball. Josh, how do the Bears get Caleb Williams, their number 1 overall pick, on an upwards trajectory?
So earlier this week, I spoke to a source inside Hallis Hall, inside the building, and they told me that while the coaching staff is disappointed with the results over the past few weeks, specifically on offense, considering their defense is just playing lights out. I mean, those are very winnable games at that point total. You imagine if the defense limits, their opposition to that, they should have a shot to win. But he described disappointment, but not discouraged. And you've seen success from Caleb Williams, as you guys discussed a little bit earlier. Specifically in this most recent game, you saw success when he's under center. Play action he's really benefited from. He's throwing some darts, but I think we have to focus on more so the bigger issue. And obviously the offensive line has struggled. Darnell Wright, their top pick, they spent very high draft pedigree on him over a season ago. I believe he's the 37th ranked tackle on PFF's grades. That's not. He simply needs to improve. As easy as that sounds, I mean, this entire offensive line has been an issue for sure. But I think really the center of the problem, it goes to their OC and Shane Waldron. And this is a guy that they hired in the same cycle as Clint Kubiak, who we've seen had success with the Saints, and Cliff Kingsbury, who has plenty of experience coaching Caleb Williams. So I think that front office, they really need to examine this decision. This is the guy that they stuck with, and Shane Waldron, he just simply needs to improve. And week by week by week, we've seen issues. And the first week, Cole Kmet, their second leading touchdown scorer from last year, he had like 20 snaps. So it's like, why aren't you using Cole Kmet? The run game, DeAndre Swift has not been able to get going. And obviously that goes to the protection. And last week, we see just a questionable 4th and 1 decision at the goal line, a speed option play call. You see DeAndre Carter attempting to block a defensive tackle who weighs, over 100 pounds more than him. Just some very questionable play call decisions, personnel decisions. And I think Shane Waldron, he's got a lot of pressure on him given his peers in this most recent coaching cycle. But the Bears, again, they still have a lot of belief in Caleb Williams. I think that pairing between him and Shane Waldron, that's really where things need to improve.
Right, and we'll see how things progress as the season unfolds. JT, thanks so much for joining us today, buddy. Great stuff as always. We'll catch you next time.
Hey, guys, always a pleasure.
All right, buddy. On that note, it's time for our first edition. I'm very excited. Our first edition of the Power Rankings of the 2024 season. We're going to roll off the top 10, and this top 10 was curated by none other than Tyler MacKillop. T, take it away, buddy.
We're the established journalists, the guys that write on the app. They don't put this together. The guy who just does a little bit of video stuff, I guess, gets to be the professional here. That's great.
I think we were worried that it was going to be too straightforward and boring if Wilkie and I did it, but we thought if we threw you into the fire, we're going to get something interesting here, so I can't wait.
I'm excited. So there's 3 themes. So this is going into week 4 power rankings. I'm going to say 3 themes here. I'm taking performance. I'm taking some of my preseason expectations from this team, and then coaching is a major theme in the top 10 here. So number 1 team, not going to be surprised, I don't think, is going to be the Kansas City Chiefs, despite some close games. I think I kind of held my tongue in the fact that I think Rashee Rice is the wide receiver 1. I don't think you're worried about Travis Kelce because Rashee Rice is legitimately potentially a top 10 receiver in this league with his ability after the catch as well. So I don't think anyone's going to have any problem with the Chiefs.
No, we're okay with that one. I think we can keep going.
At 2 is the Bills for me. I think that this is a team that just proved on Monday night that they can offensively do whatever they want. This was a team going into week 3, had one of the highest run rates in the entire league, and then they just said, Jacksonville, you're great against the run. Too bad. We're going to throw it on every single down and just beat the ever-living crap out of you.
Yeah.
So the Bills are my number 2 team.
I mean, you're not going to hear me argue about it, but I'll let Wilkie take a shot.
Any power rankings that starts with the 2 best quarterbacks in the league is fine with
It's
me.
good with you. Okay. At 3, Minnesota Vikings. This is where that coaching, the coaches and Kevin O'Connell and Brian Flores play a huge theme for this one for me. Flores, year 2 of his scheme, I think, is a big piece as to why this puzzle has been put together pretty quickly for Minnesota. So I can't find any blemishes with this team through 3 weeks. So this is the one team I'm like, I took my preconceived notions going into the season and I'm throwing them out the window with Minnesota.
Yeah, I mean, I'm super into having the Vikings really high, higher than I think anyone would have expected preseason. Maybe like a top 5 team for me with those like legit preseason Super Bowl contenders still hanging around, but I like it. I have no issue with putting them this high with how they've played so far.
Yeah, I usually am taking teams that there's a few teams that aren't in the top 10 that I just truly don't believe in. I don't think the Vikings are the 3rd best team in the league, but they've played like it. At 4 is the Packers.
Wow.
Not a 3-0 team,
Okay.
but again, coaching has just been incredible. Listen, I bet on the Titans on Sunday. I'm an idiot. I am an idiot. The most important thing for this team to me is they still haven't completely found the answers against the run. Now, they did play Saquon Barkley in week 1, but Jeff Hafley came into the year in the offseason. He said, we're going to force turnovers. And guess what? This team leads the league in turnovers 3 weeks into the season. They're averaging 3 takeaways a game. The Packers are my number 4 team in the league right now. And they don't have their quarterback.
As much as we talk about Brian Flores and the Vikings defense and the coaching job he's done, I mean, Matt LaFleur and that offense to be able to continue to produce and continue to win with Jordan Love out. And I think people are overlooking the fact that now Jordan Love's coming back. This team is going to be so much better. I think it's a great call. I might even put the Packers over the Vikings. I think there's a good chance that they could win this week.
Yeah.
Yeah, I love the Packers. The only thing I will say, and this is just to play devil's advocate, I'm not totally in on the defense yet. I just want to see a little bit more. They have started against the Titans, the Colts, and the Eagles, and the way Jalen Hurts has been playing, like that's 3 teams that are just content to offer the ball up on offense. So I'm not totally buying in on the turnover rate being sustainable for them, but I love everything they're doing on offense, and I think that they've set themselves up nicely for Jordan Love's return.
All right, here's where Tyler gets people a little upset. Okay? My number 5 team is the San Francisco 49ers. 1-2 on the season. But look, again, I got bad eyes, people. That's why I got my phone right up on my face. Brock Purdy, 8.9 yards per attempt, 3rd best in the league, 72.5% completion percentage, 8th in the league. And his completion percentage is that high with the fact he has the 3rd highest average depth of target. He's throwing the ball 10 yards downfield on average. Guys, Brock Purdy is just legitimately a top quarterback in the NFL, and he's doing it
Top what?
with I don't want to do this. Maybe 12.
Wow.
Maybe 12, I'll say.
We'll move
And
on.
last week,
man.
I know I'm really not a huge
little
Brock
high.
Purdy guy, but I got to give him his flowers. These numbers are incredible. And he did it with Jawan Jennings last week.
Yeah.
This team will get healthier. I mean, maybe Christian McCaffrey won't. He's in another country.
But who's worried about the offense? Like, even without, CMC, they're
Right.
still top 10 in the NFL in points scored. I think are you starting to get concerned about the defense?
Yeah, I think it's a fair point. But again, I'm not concerned with this team in any way, shape, or form. The defense has some questions. They are missing some pieces that got hurt late in last year at the linebacker spot. Secondary needs to be better. The pass rush is still really good. I still think the 49ers are a team you shouldn't be concerned about in any way.
I agree. Shocking loss last week, but sometimes
Yeah.
we see weird things happen in those divisional games. But this team is going to get healthier. They're going to have some easy games. They're going to be right there at the end of it. So let's see what you got for the next couple. But I think the 49ers being at 5, it doesn't bother me that much. I'm surprised.
6 is the Houston Texans. And I think last week they really felt the loss of Joe Mixon, who's proven throughout his career to be able to be pretty efficient behind some really bad offensive lines in Cincinnati. And this team can't run the ball without him. And currently CJ Stroud is on pace to be sacked over 50 times. That's a problem. This offensive line needs to be better. But I do think the defense is looking like they've taken a bit of a step forward with some offseason additions, despite the blowout loss last week.
You're not going to get any arguments out of me. I love the Texans still. I think they just ran into a buzzsaw with that Vikings defense last week. I expect them to be right there with the Chiefs and the Bills in the AFC.
All right. 7 is the Lions. I definitely still don't think we found it offensively with this team, but great news. This team's got the third best third down defense in the NFL, up 13% from last year. That was a huge problem for them. They couldn't get off the field on defense. They're actually doing it, and I wouldn't say they played particularly poor offenses throughout the first 3 weeks. I mean, I'm not super high on Tampa Bay, but the Rams, when they were healthy, and then the Cardinals' offenses put up points against everybody, I was impressed with their defense.
Okay.
Again, another one where it's like, yeah, they're probably going to be there. Like, I'm shocked right now that we haven't like flipped the table at any of these. Yeah. But
there's honestly nothing egregious. I would personally maybe flip the Lions and the Niners. I know you said there's no real concerns about the Niners. I'm personally kind of concerned about their run defense, especially with the way the game is trending now. And if you look at the Lions matchup, the way that they'd go head-to-head with them, I don't know that they'd be a great matchup with the Lions right now. Oh. And they just lost Javon Hargrave for the season. So I have a few concerns about the Niners, and Christian McCaffrey's looming Achilles injury is adding to them. I think I'm still higher on the Lions, but like this group of teams in here from 5 to 7, like you could order them.
Do a lot.
In really any order.
The Lions also have a bunch of injuries too right now. Like Frank Ragnow's hurt. We'll see what happens with him. He's their star center. That would be a big loss. He's not going to play this week, I don't think. We'll see if it keeps him out for longer. Sam Laporta has an ankle injury, and they have a bye coming up, so maybe they're going to sit him out. So there's some injuries on that team as well.
My number 8 team is the New York Jets. Without Hassan Reddick, they lead the league in sack rate. They're doing okay. And I some of the competition doesn't look particularly great, namely the Titans and the Patriots being their 2 wins. But I thought it was a case of for Aaron Rodgers just getting back into the groove of things, that he looked really, really good on Thursday. Again, the Patriots aren't one that should be a playoff team that's too impactful for them. But I do think the Jets are proving me right in some ways so far.
I'm going to have to see it against a better team first. But I think they could be in this range by the end of the season for me personally, but probably still outside the top 10, just having not really gotten a quality win yet.
Yep. At 9 is the Eagles. I'm saying give Vic Fangio time for this defense to become fully deployed and give this offense a chance to get a little healthier, because I don't think I have much hope for this team if they are missing A.J. Brown for an extended period, and then if they're missing both him and Devontae Smith. Turnover, Nick Sirianni's a problem, but I still think this team took a bit of a step forward. Jalen Carter had a great game on the weekend. I still think the Eagles are a top 10 team in the league, especially talent-wise.
All right, let's see number 10 then. I got to know who got left out.
Okay. My number 10 team is the Seattle Seahawks. I love this coaching staff. They're kind of playing into this team's strengths and avoiding their weaknesses. Geno Smith has like the fourth lowest time to throw, and this offensive line has been really, really bad. And I know they're not expected to get Abe Lucas back anytime soon. They just lost George Fant. I'm waiting to see a team that actually puts some stress on that offensive line to really have a good judgment of them, because I don't think the Dolphins are a team to be able to do that. But I am impressed with what the Seahawks have done offensively despite that, and I do think that this is a playoff team for sure.
Okay, so we have no Steelers at 3-0, which
Steelers.
I respect.
Yeah.
I agree with that.
Yeah.
Here's my issue. No Saints.
No Saints.
Are you too tied
Am
to
I
your
biased?
preseason take that they would be the worst team in the league?
They lost Eric McCoy at center for an extended period, so I called out the offensive line that's been actually pretty good. I'm concerned because they were pretty bad once he was out last week against the Eagles. I think the Saints are frauds.
Okay.
That would be my
I would personally have the Saints over the Jets right now based on what we've seen so far, but as someone who got pre-mad at this list, thinking I would have some issues, I think it's okay.
Same.
I'm okay with it.
A lot smoother than I expected.
The teams that are out.
We just popped up on the monitor. What are you going to do? It's no timeouts. We're not taking a break. Keep going. You can just hear yourself.
The teams that are out are the Cowboys, the Ravens. We said Saints, Steelers. Then the Bucks. I think you lose to the Broncos. Like, sorry, I can't keep you around, despite Sean Payton having a massive. He really has one over on Todd Bowles. He's like perfect against him in the regular season of his career. So those are the teams that are missing. I gave the Falcons some serious thought. I thought they played really well the last couple weeks, despite the fact that they did, they lost the Steelers, who aren't in my top 10, and they kind of really had a chance to beat the Chiefs and didn't take care of business. But
it's a tough thing to do at this point in the year too. One of the things I'm realizing is just how many teams have serious injuries right now, and they're missing guys, and we got to kind of project that, but also trying to figure out which teams that have all these new pieces that are coming together. You mentioned like the Seahawks, the Jets. How much better are these teams going to get? The Falcons as well, right?
Yeah.
How much better are these teams going to get? I think a lot of them are going to improve as we go here. We haven't seen the best version of them yet. So kudos to you, man. That was actually pretty good. I actually like that.
And it's always tough, too, when sort of the early results are so counter to what we expected coming into the season. It's like, how do you weight this fresh data with what, we had sort of banked on for months in terms of projection. So well done to you,
Listen,
sir.
I'm gonna hang on to the Saints thing for
Of course.
for a while.
Till week
listen,
17.
I let go of the Jags thing. I couldn't put
It's true. It's true. I thought they might sneak in at 10, but I guess they couldn't do it after the 6th worst loss.
No
in franchise
Chargers either,
history.
eh?
No Chargers. No, I didn't really give them a
That's-
thought. They
A
lost
rightful
every
omission.
important player on their roster this past week too.
Great stuff, T. All right, fellas, let's move on to our final segment of today's show. A little segment called Go For It. You guys got to put yourselves out there, field position be damned, and give me some bold predictions. First, I want to know, who's the next coach, the first coach of 2024 to be fired?
This is going to be a little bit of a bet on no one getting fired midseason because I don't think the Bears would do this until the end of the year, but I think they need a change more than everyone. Josh talked about it a little bit. A lot of their issues are what the offense is doing right now. The protection plan for Caleb Williams is really threatening to hurt his development early on. And again, I know that's more of an OC problem than it is on the head coach, who Matt Eberflus is a defensive guy. But this was his OC hire. This is the second time he's hired an OC, and it's the second time it's trending toward a disaster. Are we really going to let him do it a third time? I think if they don't turn it around really soon, at the end of the year, we're having a conversation about whether Caleb Williams is better paired with a young offensive mind going forward.
Not to be the schedule guy always, but their schedule does get a little bit easier here. The Rams, the Panthers, I think they get the Jags, they got a bye, and then they have the Commanders. So those are teams that maybe Caleb Williams will start to do something against. I think it could get a little bit easier for them here.
Listen, I said this about the Bengals. You think about the Bengals' schedule, it hasn't really been that difficult, but technically the schedule for the Bears was pretty light already. The Titans and I thought the Colts, Caleb put up numbers, but it didn't result in any points on the board.
Losing to the Colts the way Anthony Richardson played in Week 3, that's a big problem for me. Yeah.
My only concern with the Bears, and if they actually do this with Eberflus, is if they're, I wouldn't say this is necessarily, maybe it's a Poles thing, maybe it's not, that, hey, we made the commitment to, this is the guy, we want you to come back next year. They might not be willing to pull the trigger quickly because they don't want to just tell people that they were wrong this fast, even though it's not a new hire, but they made a new commitment to Eberflus this offseason. So that'd be my only question.
Yeah, I like it. T, who's the first coach to be fired in 2024?
I was thinking it while he was talking. I'm like, I forgot who I picked, and I remembered it was Nick Sirianni. I don't want to make this too long, but it's crazy that we've had this conversation for this long about Sirianni when it hasn't been that long that he was playing in a Super Bowl. But they could have beat the Saints by 3 scores, and they were playing for their lives in the last few minutes because of just calculated decision making, maybe in the moment, but then those decisions aren't consistent throughout the game. And I just feel like there's a straw that breaks the camel's back moment, and it could have been this week if they lost. It really could have. And I really think that the other case, or my case for this is also the fact that they have 2 pretty capable coordinators that could just, Vic Fangio and Kellen Moore could just step in and probably do a good enough job. You don't have a concern of who's going to take his spot in the interim. They got 2 guys capable of doing it too.
Weren't they just in your top 10?
They were 9th, if I'm not mistaken.
Eagles fans don't give a damn.
Something doesn't totally add up there, but okay. All right.
Boone, who you got?
I went with a low-hanging fruit. I went with Doug Peterson. I'm guessing, I didn't look at the odds, but I'm guessing he's probably the favorite to be the first coach fired after that Monday night game.
-10,000,
the Bills that beat down Demetrius Harvey of the Florida Times-Union. He had a report that somebody close to Shad Khan, the Jags owner, that they said he's normally like a nice gentleman or a kind fellow. I forget exactly how they worded it, but that after that game, he was visibly upset. So I think that if we see them lose another game or 2 here, it could be Doug Peterson on the chopping block.
Did you see?
Sorry, go ahead.
Did you see that Khan said before the season that this was the best roster in the history of the
Well, they went out and spent in free
organization?
agency. They added a bunch of guys. They were really hoping that this team was going to do something. And they've had some injuries too, but just overall, just massively underperforming based on the talent they have.
I will say, though, these two answers were were probably my top answers, especially Peterson after Monday night.
I think the common theme with our answers is that these are head coaches in place with systems that are not doing any favors to their young quarterbacks.
Yeah.
One is paid, one is the future of the franchise in Chicago. Something needs to change if those guys are going to get on track.
You either die a Super Bowl champion or you live long enough to get fired by the Jacksonville Jaguars. It's the famous line from The Dark Knight.
Yeah, I wonder if Bill Belichick's looking at houses in Jacksonville.
Yeah,
right
yeah.
now.
Oh my God, he wouldn't debase himself such.
I think he did a great job.
Boys,
though.
let's go for it once more. Who's the next quarterback to be benched?
Surprise, surprise, it's Gardner Minshew. He shouldn't have been the starter heading into the season. It should have been Aiden O'Connell. I think we saw in the second half of the Ravens game, he has that playmaker gene, and you can win with that sometimes. But as we saw in the first game and the third game, it's too much of a roller coaster. Otherwise, he leaves too many plays on the field. I don't know that Aiden O'Connell would be that much better, but they're currently wasting a really good cast of playmakers, so they might as well switch it up.
He only
and see what
found
happens.
Washington State Gardner Minshew for one game. Did
Yeah.
you see that little
Yeah.
quote?
I always wonder at what point each season we're going to get to that moment when Wilkie gives up on the Raiders. As the Raiders fan here, wow, 3 games in, but I get it. Like that Panthers game, wow, totally understandable.
Yeah, well, I wasn't surprised, so that's kind of the problem. Yeah.
T, who's the next QB to be benched?
Minshew would be my answer, but I'm going to go Will Levis would be my next one. Just taking care of the football is just fundamentally a thing that every coach is just do this, don't kill us with turnovers, and we'll have a chance to win. And the Titans are a team that definitely would be saying that 3 weeks through the season because the Bears would have been a win. The Packers game last week, I know they lost by a few scores, but that game immediately got away from them after that pick six early in the game because Levis actually drove the ball down the field nicely to tie the game right after the Packers opened the game with a scoring drive of their own. Then he turned the ball over, and body language-wise, I thought that team was dead.
We have one moment every week where Will Levis does a what have I done thing after giving the ball up. You can't do that. That's going to get you benched in the league.
And then his coach, very
Yes.
publicly excoriates him on the sidelines, being like, yeah, why did you do that?
What are you doing? Yeah.
I like that call too. Boone, you're up.
I thought the obvious answer here was Jacoby Brissett, so I didn't pick him because I took Doug Peterson for the other one. But I think we should mention Jacoby Brissett, that they want to get Drake May out there. Yeah. So he would have been my pick here, but I didn't take him because I thought one of you guys would. I took somebody that, I also think should be given up on at this point, and that's Deshaun Watson and the Browns. He is never going to get back to being the guy that he was in Houston. I think we all know that at this point. I think the Browns don't want to admit it. He is not the guy that they traded for, or they thought they were trading for, and signed that big contract. He's not throwing the ball well. He claims he doesn't want to run the ball more, so I'm not really sure what he wants to do. He seems to say the wrong thing every time he gets asked questions. It's almost an embarrassment for that franchise now. And they have Jameis Winston behind him, who we know about Jameis and all the mistakes that he can make, but man, would that be fun if we could get Jameis out there in that system playing some YOLO ball. It would be great for fantasy, and that's what I always want to see. So I'm hoping that we get to see Jameis make some starts this season.
I do think if it was up to the coaching staff, he would have been benched a long time ago, but this is just a business decision as much as anything else. I doubt that ownership is going to approve him sitting on the bench when he's getting paid, what is it, $100 million over the next 2 years, fully guaranteed. So that's my only hesitation. But
Jeremy Fowler at ESPN reported that he didn't think, based on his sources, that they were going to bench Watson unless it turned into what he called a complete disaster. We're not far from it being a complete disaster.
You could argue it's been that way for about a year now, so I don't know what we're waiting for.
You could also argue that this is a team that is pretty veteran-laden that can't really afford to wait and find out. They are a team that have expectations to make the playoffs and compete, and if they continue to lose, I don't know how they don't make that change to see what they can find. If they go to Jameis for a game and they don't find what they're looking for, sure, you can go back. The guy's making a ton of money. He's not leaving anytime soon.
Mm-hmm. Good stuff, fellas. We'll see what happens. And before we sign off, a little trivia for you. The last time Travis Kelce received only 12 targets over a 3-game span was 2014, his first full season in the league. Can you name the 11 tight ends that had 700 or more receiving yards in 2014? If you get one wrong, you're out. Wilkins, you're up first. So we need the 11 tight ends with 700 plus receiving yards in 2014.
Greg Olson.
That's one.
Delaney Walker.
That's two.
Oh, yes.
Nice
Come
pull.
on.
Nice pull.
Gronk?
That's 3. He
Oh,
led the
that's
league.
easy.
He led all tight ends.
I'll take
in
the easy one.
receiving yards. Yeah, he led all tight ends in receiving yards that year.
Antonio Gates.
That's 4.
He stole my answer. Should have saved Delaney Walker. I'm out. I'm lost now. Do I say this? Jimmy Graham?
Oh, that's what I
That's
was gonna
5.
Say.
Yes.
We're cooking.
No.
We're
now,
cooking.
Now I'm floundering here. 2014.
A decade ago.
Oh man, that might be.
You were
it
in
for
your
me.
early 50s.
How long ago did Tony Gonzalez retire? I don't have one. That's it. I'm out.
You're out.
I'm out.
Boone's out.
Okay,
It's
so
a 2-horse race.
should I go for the ultimate pull here? I might be a year off on it though. Was this the Gary Barnage season?
That would be that would be a great poll.
Wilkie, you're out.
Gary Barnage was an inside joke amongst the Scores football team for a long time,
Was it-
so I love that
was
you
it
brought him up.
2015?
I'm not sure. It was around there though.
T, if you just get one, you're the winner.
I'm thinking about Packers tight ends right now, and I can't get one out of my mouth.
You gave me an
2014.
assist last week. I don't know, like Jermichael Finley. That was a Packers
No,
tight
it's
end
gotta be
around there.
after. Because 14
That was an unauthorized hint, and it was wrong.
I'm going through just trying to pull a tight end of some sort.
I would say there are
Oh.
several obvious ones still on the board.
Bengals tight end, no. Cardinal. Oh, no, can't. Could Zach Ertz be in here at 14?
Final
That's
answer?
10 years ago. Zach Ertz.
Correct.
Yeah.
Yes.
He
Well
is the
done.
winner. Zach Ertz had 702 receiving yards that year. Just narrowly made it. Here are the guys you missed. Martellus Bennett,
Oh, okay. Did he play on the Packers that year or no?
Chicago.
Chicago that year.
Travis Kelce. Nobody said Travis Kelce.
I thought we weren't allowed to.
Oh, because
No, you were allowed to.
He made the caveat of he went a 3-game span of 12 targets.
I thought
Yeah.
Kelsey we weren't allowed to use him. Okay, okay.
You were allowed to say Travis Kelce.
Gotcha.
You chose not to. I don't know why. Kobe Fleener,
wow.
Heath
I wouldn't have
Miller,
thought about it in 24 or Heath in 2014.
and
Wow.
Jason Witten.
Jason
Oh,
Witten. Okay.
yeah.
Congratulations, T. You're the winner. Well done.
Nice.
And that'll do it for us today at No Timeouts. Once again, that's Justin Boone. That's Tyler MacKillop. That's Dan Wilkins. My name is Jonah Birnbaum. We'll see you next time.